Why does that happen? I unmute myself and then it becomes muted again. Crazy. G'day. How you doing? It's Jeff here, live with you from Tasmania in Australia, and I'll be joined, of course, in a little while by I'll just catch up with that message in a minute, which is kind of weird. As I was saying, Ash will be joining us in about 10, 15 minutes or so. And he's listening to all the news, getting all the late mail for us at the moment. And of course, he's on fire at the moment. He's got the Euro going. Well, I think he's got the Euro still going. He had the FTSE going on Friday. I think that's still going, and had a pretty decent week last week. And we had some nice results. Hopefully, you were on board some of those. That would be good. First up, of course, as always, we look at the pound US dollar breakout trade. And I'll set that up for you now. The entries so far are 1.3551 to the downside, so that'll be the short entry. The long entry will be at 1.3574, not 3674 as I've got it there. Let me just change that. I better share my screen, eh? That'd be a good idea. There you go. Okay, Gary, I get the reason why there's an issue here. Gary, unfortunately, because we had some trolls in the show last week, we have to have two names. Now, I'm pretty sure I know who you are, but Angel, who is keeping our feed nice and secure from trolls, is under instruction to have two names and only allow two names into the show. So if you can produce two names, please, that would be fantastic. And that goes for everybody, of course. If you're listening to us on YouTube, then if you want to get into the show, there's a link below us here. All you need to do is click on that. But to get in, you will need to have two names and not just the one. So I'll get back to this pound trade and we'll set that up first and go from there. Where did I get to? The 1.3551 entry, 1.3571 is the stop loss. It's the long I'm looking for, isn't it? So 1.3574 will be the entry for the long, and the stop loss for the long, it's a pretty tiny one. Let me check what that is. Stop loss for the long will be 1.3563. 1.3563. So only 11 pips there. Let me see if we can get to the first take profit before that weekly pivot. That's a bit unnerving there. So 11 pips allows us half for our TP1. Which makes it 1.3579. Now the weekly pivot is at what level? Tell me. 1.3580. So I'll allow that. To happen. 1.3579 will be TP1. And TP2, that's half our risk, of course, and TP2 will be double our risk, which will be 22 pips, and 1.3596 becomes our TP2. Now, if you're joining us for the first time, this is a one cancels other trade, so we place both orders. If one is triggered, we cancel the other, and vice versa. So if the short is triggered, we will cancel the long. And if the long is triggered, we will cancel the short. Now we're getting pretty close to time. So I'll put the sell order in because it looks as though it will be the first one to trigger. And if we miss it, we miss it. That's fine. Now, this is still in trial mode, guys, so do not put any meaningful money on this trade. Please do not do that. This is not a proven strategy by any system, or by any measure, rather. So it's a sell stop. And the entry level is at 1.3551, as I said. 1.3551. The stop loss is at 1.3571. TP1, we will think about when we get there. Okay, so the short's in play. You can see the stop loss there, the entry underneath, well, pretty much underneath the current bar as well. So TP1, I'll mark that on the chart, will be at 1.3541. So that'll give us a little indicator as where we need to take profit, and it's there. 1.3541, and we need to place the long. That's all we need to do for the short. The buy order is on your screen. Again, trial mode, guys. Do not place any meaningful money on this. Entry level 1.3574. Stop loss is 1.3563. Okay, both orders now are placed. So until we get one of them triggered, we do absolutely nothing. When we do get one of them triggered, we cancel the other, and then we look for our TP1s. I know where TP1 is there, right below the weekly pivot. Now, you might have to be fairly quick with that one. 3579. Rightio, ho, ho. Let's set that up. Now, the link is in the Telegram group. Now they send it all to ATB Telegram. Okay, so anybody who is in the room cannot talk to us, and in fact cannot participate unless you have two names. So on YouTube, I'm just checking YouTube now. My apologies for the slight delay. Okay. My apologies for... You don't want to hear that again? All right, anybody in YouTube, if you would like to join the meeting, there is a link to the meeting, as in the Zoom meeting, below us. And there is also a link to the... I think there's a link to the... Yes, there is. There's a link to the Telegram group. Now, the Telegram group is, and we're going to use this pretty much extensively as we have been doing in the last week or so, to upgrade the trades that we take in this. When I say upgrade, update the trades that we take in this show. In other words, we will manage them via the Telegram group. We will also be giving the occasional trade call in there as well. Look, it's not a trade call group, guys, but if we see a decent trade and we're in front of the charts, we will definitely be putting those in there for you as well. It's also a precursor to what the show is actually called. The show's called Trading Buddies. Now, we've chosen that name for a reason, because Ash and I, some 2 years ago, I think it was, even more now, at the Bali trading retreat, decided that we would like to trade together and pick up a little of each other's methods or methodology, if you like. And I think we've benefited by that greatly, both of us, and have no hesitation in suggesting that it's a great idea if you guys were to have a trading buddy. Of course, Ash and I can be your trading buddies by being in the room. That's fine. If you're willing to share your thoughts and ask questions, only too happy for that to happen. And that's why we've called it the Trading Buddies Show. But the Telegram group and we haven't activated this yet, and that's not because we're holding it back for any reason other than we don't have the logistics behind it yet. And what we're going to do there is suggest to you, if you want to have a trading buddy outside of the shows, and I mean, you'll link up in whatever fashion you want to link up. If you, for instance, want to trade Asia session, and there's nothing going on in Asia session in terms of broadcasts from our groups, then why not have a trading buddy if you want? It's certainly not compulsory, but we're going to try and utilize that Telegram group to hook you guys up if you wish for that to happen. So that is an option for you as well. But in general, we'll be putting our thoughts in the Telegram group. It's completely free at the moment. That won't be the case forever. In fact, I think there's about 22 days left in that, might be 21. So if you would like to have a sample of what's in the Telegram group, then please do so. The link is below us, I believe. All you need to do is click on that and you'll be admitted into the Telegram group. And of course, if you like what you see, you can stay with us when the time comes for that to change. Wow, there's a whole lot happening. And I'll go first up to my failings, if you want to call them that. I don't necessarily call it that. I just call it misread. And that's where we'll go first up. We're going to have a look at the dollar index. And I anticipated that the dollar index would continue to fall until it got to this level here. So when it hit this resistance trade line, I anticipated that it would bounce off that and come down and form a right shoulder. Well, it has formed a right shoulder, but not where I anticipated that it might. All of that said, we Zoom link. Angel, is there a Zoom link? I don't know, guys. Angel will work on that, I'm sure. So I anticipated that little pullback down to here has not happened, and I think now that it probably won't, given that we've now had a close above that trade line and look destined to attract, or for this trade line to attract price. And certainly there's a lot of commentary around, are we going to have a strong dollar as the Biden administration takes hold? It's in the Telegram groups. Okay, there you go, guys. So if you haven't got the link, then go to the Telegram group. You have got the link for that, and it's below us. Hook into the Telegram group, and there is the link for the Zoom meeting, so you can come in and chat to us. Alrighty, that's been sorted. So where to from now with the US dollar? Well, like I say, it does now look as though it's got a trajectory higher. But that said, and I'm always one for the safe way, rather than just jump in here. What I do see is that right shoulder that I spoke of. It's a little bit misformed, sorry, misshapen, whatever you want to call it, but it is there. And if that's a right shoulder and that's a left shoulder, then surely this is the neckline, which has now been broken. Now, my rule of thumb here, or indeed the way I actually play this as a tradable scenario, is wait for that neckline to be retested. Now, it hasn't been, hasn't done that on any time frame that I can see anyway. So let's keep that in mind as well. I'll keep it in mind as I look to trade this week. Now, I do have a bias short against a couple of things. Have we been triggered short? No. I better keep my eye on that because it looks like we may well be any tick of the old clock. And we need to be conscious of TP1 down here. Now, I will, it looks like we are going to be triggered into that very shortly. Ash has joined us. G'day, buddy.
Hello, mate. How's things?
I'm pretty good. Pretty good.
Awesome.
I thought we might just get triggered into the pound trade, but we haven't. I was just saying that, in fact, I was confessing to my sins of last week when I was anticipating the dollar index to come down a little bit further and form a right shoulder for us.
Mm.
Well, it did, but it didn't come to where I wanted it to come. And for that reason, I'm not in any positions. Are you still in the euro?
No, I've closed out my euro trade, mates. I closed it out actually on there's a neckline on the euro. It was a good trade actually. It was I was quite happy with how it went, because it was pretty much the last hours of the end of last week that I closed it out. So it's pretty much the same price as where we are actually. I closed it out pretty much on price now. Where I think what you're saying is interesting is that I still think there's a possibility of that right shoulder, and I wonder whether we get to that 91 level on the DXY and find a neckline there and start to retrace instead. So rather than,
so you're thinking bigger picture.
Not really. No, I'm wondering. So you see where the trend line where your trend line starts
here. Yep.
Yeah, I wonder whether we get just a slightly more shallow right shoulder. So rather than the second point down, which we were both looking at for a potential low for the right shoulder, I wonder whether we get where that trend line starts as our neckline. So we pop up to that horizontal level and meet that doji high, and then start to retrace a little bit. So we get much more of a shallow right shoulder, and pop basically down to just a bit where we are now, and to meet the trend line. Where I think that would be better is the trend, your original area that you had your trend line would also meet that right shoulder as well. So yeah, so it pops back up to the horizontal level, pops back down again, then it becomes interesting. Yeah, so that's that one there.
More lines here than Central Station. Yeah, look, possible, definitely possible. But I just said, I don't know if you're in the room at the time, I just said I want to see a pullback anyway.
Yes.
Because if this is the neckline, then I want to see it retested before I start to think. Okay,
yeah, I agree, mate.
Let's go.
I'd agree, and but you see that area, that high of the doji is only like 20 pips away, isn't it? And it would also meet that trend line pretty much, depending on at what point. Let's say it meets it tomorrow, it's going to get fairly close to that upper trend line as well. So that should create some resistance for the dollar. Things, seasonally, we're not really looking for a strong dollar until February. So Joe Biden's inauguration is on Wednesday, and that might just see a little bit of tepid price action for the next few days. And we've got Martin Luther King Day as well today. So that would suggest that things are going to be fairly quiet. Now that does mean that if volatility does pick up, it's going to be pretty sharp, because with a lack of volume, then markets can get thrown around pretty aggressively. But they tend to settle where they were when they started. So on a day like today, I would have thought that we'd probably get some continued weakness. Quiet in the crypto markets as well. Quiet on the markets means crypto's raw. Okay, well, no, that could be the case. Yeah, that might well be the case today. And I wonder whether they roar to the downside, Shukri. And the reason that I say that is that the news, if cryptos have been following, they do seem to be more of a risk-off asset class right now than anything else. Yeah, they're crashing up. I wonder whether they come down, because we've seen just more lockdowns that have been announced in Germany on Friday, and Switzerland as well. They're meant to be coming out of the lockdown in 10 days' time. Doesn't look likely to happen, and that will potentially weaken the euro a little bit longer term, because or in the nearer term, I should say, nearer to sort of medium term. Because the euro economy, euro bloc is going to struggle, really to kind of like get their economic health in order while they're having to continue this lockdown. But the States is still really badly hit by this virus, mate. They don't seem to have a handle on it whatsoever. The UK, I think, handled the initial phase of the pandemic really badly. But now, whether it's the right thing, I still don't know. I don't know whether this vaccine rollout is going to be the right thing. I've still got my suspicions about the vaccine, but they are rolling out to the point where they believe that the whole population will be vaccinated by September. And they are they're doing, they're producing a lot of vaccines every day, and it was of course the first country to start vaccinating as well. So the UK might well just about be able to lift themselves out of it if the vaccine works.
Well, that's the question, isn't it?
Yeah, because we're getting reports that that the new strain of coronavirus that seems to be floating around is not necessarily going to be blocked by the vaccine. So it might block the original one, but the new strain seems to be fairly resilient to it. So I wonder whether this thing is going to be just end up being a big waste of money.
It's not going to be good, is it? That does not augur well for any confidence anywhere.
No, it doesn't, mate. No, it doesn't at all. The corridor, the travel corridor has also been shut down temporarily as well. That the UK has enjoyed with some countries, which is also putting pressure on travel stocks this morning. In other news, BT, the British Telecoms are getting fined. I think they've got some sort of lawsuit going on. I haven't checked their stock price as yet as it opened up, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're tanking to the downside. So the markets look weak on the whole. I think China's the Hang Seng ended up a little bit higher. And China's reaction to the pandemic so far has still been the most robust. But there's quite a few things that don't suggest this is a risk on day. Now, whether that means that people want to sell if they're comfortable selling is another question entirely. I would have thought that that buying today would be an absolute no-no. Just no volume whatsoever for markets. News that continues to be fairly tepid and a little bit negative, and then quite a lot of shifting going on as well. I beg your pardon?
Dollar strength you can throw in there
dollar
as well.
Strength, yeah. Which and this is the thing. I think what we're looking at really is a quiet day because of Martin Luther King Day. Who knows what happens tomorrow and Wednesday? Going into the inauguration, it'd be interesting to know what the seasonality is on that. I don't know. But
there's our TP1, guys. Take your TP1 there.
Well done, buddy. Well done. And I think you're in good shape with that. I mean, I don't particularly like the pound when it comes down to the fundamentals. I think the pound is still in the UK is still in quite a lot of trouble. I think Brexit they're calling them teething problems, but it's not really aiding the UK economy right now. The way that trade is currently going, it's not going particularly well at the minute. So there's still some doubts, I think, about the pound as a currency. The euro looks like it's in a bigger hole. Merkel leaving at the end of this year as well. I think they've appointed their new chancellor in Germany. Is anybody going to be will anybody be as successful as Angela Merkel? I mean, you'd have to question it. The new guy does seem to be a bit of a roll on from the Merkel policies. So maybe nothing too extreme and nothing too much to worry about. But will anybody be quite as good as Angela Merkel when it comes down to the German picture on the whole? I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. I think she was quite brilliant in many respects.
Certainly, big shoes to fill. I've no doubt over time that will be okay. But yeah, in the near term. Great question, isn't it? Does it add extra pressure to the euro? Probably.
Yes, I would have thought it would do. I think when we're looking at this, maybe the transition, because we know that Germany is the major economy in the eurozone, and we also know in some respects you could start looking at it as the only economy when it comes down to holding up the bloc. Now that doesn't. I'm not suggesting by any stretch that the new chancellor messes up the growth of the German position, but I'm not so sure whether, as I say, whether he's going to be quite as successful across the board. Now, leaders are different, so he does
and like to make their own mark as well,
and need to make their own mark. Really, I mean,
no pun intended.
It's a difficult thing, isn't it? When it comes, it's a difficult thing
You have to
when
think about that one for a while.
yeah, I did. It's a difficult thing when you've got somebody so popular and somebody so successful leaving office. I mean, if you think about most leaders that left office in the world and then passed on to the next person, the next person a lot of the time, if they're a little bit fluffy and you know that they're kind of they're an extension of the previous person, they try and almost kind of keep the same model, then they they don't tend to have the same kind of success as the original. You know, nobody's quite as good as the original, which is why Obama passing to Trump probably was so good for the U.S. economy, because Trump is so different to Obama. You
You
know,
could say
he's
that.
but God, I mean, geez, he really is mixing it up, isn't he, mate? Another potential impeachment kind of has gone through with him. And what happens in 2 days' time? Do you think there's going to be more fireworks on
Oh
inauguration day?
man, you would hope not, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
you would think the military intervention was very wise
Yep.
and probably should, quell any of that. But gee whiz, Americans have this incredible thing about them, and if it looks like their liberty has been threatened in any way, shape, or form, they just go, God bless America, and away we go.
Yeah, yeah,
And they come out fighting. It's an interesting scenario, but
yeah.
gee, you would hope that nothing happens, because there'll be carnage if they're these dudes are trained not to muck around.
Yeah, yeah. That's their that is their bottom line, isn't it? And you know they've the job is to protect, and that will be no doubt what they do. You know, if there are any problems, I just don't understand really the situation in the States. I really don't. It just it's such a strange mix of opinions in a nation which is, you know, kind of hailed as the leader of the free world, the leading country of the free world. It's a strange kind of
Comes at a
melting pot.
very, very big price. That label.
Yes, yes, it does. Well, they're predicting China to be the biggest economy by 2029, I think it is now. So that's been shifted forward. Um, you know, the pandemic obviously has changed things, but you know, as I say, Matt, I can't get the pandemic story really out of my mind at the minute.
Hmm.
The lack of success you know, potentially the lack of success with the vaccine, further lockdowns going on across Europe. It doesn't seem to me like we've really started the year in the way that the market's needed. You know, when it comes down to news, it does seem to be that you know will it be a case of buy the rumor, sell the news? You know, the vaccine kind of rollout is the big buy. As soon as that happened, everything just went up. Everything just popped up significantly. But as things start to unfold, are we actually going to start to see some further downside? Because uh, economies can't really. There are businesses that were already teetering, and travel stocks mainly were already teetering. Well, you know, before we came into this year, and the last thing that they need is further upset in their supply chain, if you like. Um, and it looks like they're going to get it, and it not down to maybe just one more lockdown in January. Sorry, one more lockdown in the first quarter. Why is it just going to end in the first quarter? You know, it seems to me
Yeah.
like this thing is going to just is we know that you know that they've already said that we'll always probably have COVID and we'll always have to live with COVID, but it's more the effects of COVID that I wonder are just going to continue just to kind of hit the country, hit the world, you know, in over the next few years. I wonder whether it might be more of a 3 to 5 year thing,
Well,
where if
it
it
was always about an effective vaccine, wasn't it?
yeah, yeah, it was, but now it's
Because
starting to mutate. Is that you know, is that going to be the next story?
Well, it's a virus, so of course it's going to mutate. That's exactly what they do.
Yeah,
And flus, influenzas, they've been with us for years now.
yeah,
And fortunately, we've been able to stay ahead of them in terms of um, Are they called? Yeah, they're called vaccines. I get a shot every year now because I'm old, and I think that's just going to be the way of the world. It seems to be,
Yeah.
because they can't kill it, you know.
Yeah, I mean, but you see, if people are vaccinated, that means that life goes on as normal. I suppose my question is, does it get to the point where actually lockdowns almost become a norm? You know, like these
Wow.
occasional lockdowns almost become a norm because
Ooh, it's a scary thought, mate.
yeah, because COVID continues to mutate and it continues to wipe people out. You know, this does seem to be a particularly harsh strain of virus in the way that it's that it first hit and the way that it does seem to be reacting to any kind of defense against it. So that's going to hit economies. You know, I wonder
So
whether
you
we're
think we're in
actually.
a little bit of a bubble at the moment, thinking that all is well with the world?
Well, if we consider the price action on some of these markets, so the FTSE 100 really is you know, and I'll share my screen just for a moment here. It's not really
Mm-hmm.
a comment about a trade because I don't really have a trade
Hey,
for the day.
before you do,
Yeah,
just quick updates on this trade. Those of you who are following this, what we've done is taken our first profit at half of the risk, which was 10 pips, and we moved our stops 10 pips from entry, which coincidentally and nicely is just above the bar that took us in. Our next take profit level is at twice our risk, which is at 40 pips, which is down here at 135.11. So that's the next thing we will do. We'll either take, and this is entirely up to our further analysis, is if we actually take more profit here, and I think I would, given that we've got the monthly pivot dead ahead, I think I would definitely take more profit here and move stops to entry at that point, then trail 2 bars, 2 1-hour bars as I've got there. Should have cancelled the buy order at that point that we got taken in, and that is that. And just a quick update on the other trades I'm in, Ash.
yep.
Aussie Kiwi, that just keeps going, and I'm considering where my next move is stop loss wise. I think it probably needs to be there, so I'll just below DS2. So we're just going to take some more profit on that. What's the level? 107.46. So we'll move that up to 107.46, locking in another 54 pips. And we risked 26 on this, I think. So there's another 2 times risk. 107.46. That's now at about 10x.
Nicely done, mate.
That one. The other one, we're in EuroCAD. That's pulling back as we anticipated it might. That could well come back to here. That's okay. Our stop loss is up here. We don't have an issue with that. We are in that trade, and it's on the monthly chart. Those of you who were, I'm not sure how many there were, suggesting that we should have taken on a smaller time frame, of course, have been proven absolutely correct. But that's the reason I didn't do that is because it wasn't a setup for me. But that candle there, beautiful candle. Just keep that one in your mind. If I'd seen that up here after a bit of a rally back, then there would have been no stopping us trading that. But that didn't happen, and we're in the monthly position. The only other one that I'm still holding is Swissy yen. Swissy yen, we could tighten our stops up on that, maybe.
Having a
Not
nice
really
run at
yet.
some of these long-term moves, mate.
Yeah, this one's okay. That's looking quite good.
Yeah.
This, as I said at the time, has got a huge potential. If it were to, break clear of these next lot of levels, this one here, and we find ourselves down here, we're looking at 20x, I think, or something like that. Can't quite remember, but I did measure it at the time, which was one of the reasons that we got into it. If it can, it can. If it can't, it can't, obviously. But I did like this level, and we've come off it fairly well. We may even be able to scale into this as we go, if it grows legs. So I'm just going to leave that where it is. I have taken my second profit on that, and the reason I've taken my second profit on that is what happened earlier today, where we came and hit the monthly pivot. So that's where we took our second profit. and our stops are now at entry. Yeah, nothing to do, guys. Nothing to do here. Just let it sort itself out. There's likely to be a decent retracement. I would suggest it'll come back to the pivots probably, unless it reverses and goes all the way. But I'd be looking to scale in around here somewhere if we can get up there. And that is it, mate. I've got a few on the watch list. I'll go through those at the top of the hour.
Fantastic stuff, mate. Yeah, let's just have a look at markets and see what we got, because obviously we've seen a huge move back to the upside in many of these. So we're just going to go right across the board now. Australia, the Aussie to 200 is, you know, as far as I can see it so far, I think that they've been fairly well shielded from what's been going on. Because of the way that they handle the pandemic, and really the best course of action has proven to be not the vaccine but successful lockdowns, and I would have thought like a test and trace system might end up being better than a vaccine itself. So, you know, many
it's the
countries
trace system that has really held us back, because as soon
Right.
as we get a case, they're on it. Where did that come from?
Yeah.
And they jump on it straight away. And anybody who's been in contact with that person is isolated instantly.
Yeah.
That's the key. That's really the key.
And you know, it's almost like going to a doctor to fix the issue, or trying to use kind of trying to use natural methods to try and fix an issue. And I think in some respects, you know, where this is proven to, so far anyway, to be a much more successful play is using that kind of methodology rather than trying to vaccinate people. I mean, I think the UK, considering it was an island, they really could have been on top of this stuff very, very early. They could have put in testing systems in airports, you know, right the way back in March, and made sure that the vaccine did not come into the country back then. Now they're starting to do that now, so they're starting to kind of like get together a proper plan, and maybe it's taken this long to kind of come up with a proper plan because of Brexit. Really, you know, they've had the Brexit argument on the burner, really on the front burner for the whole of last year, and now they're just starting to kind of play. You know, now they've played catch up, and now they're in a situation where they have got they've probably got a bit more of a strategy around it. So looking at it, the Aussie would still probably be one that I'd be quite interested in, and also because of commodities as well. You know, if we are going to get this inflation story, then the commodity prices are commodities are probably a pretty good bet when it comes down to inflation kind of starting to pick up. And that would mean that Australian companies probably will do quite well out of it. Now, I'm not up enough on the Australian the detail of the Australian Aussie 200. I know the index, but I don't know that the company's enough. I don't know how it's weighted, so I'd have to do a bit of research on that. But I quite like it as an index, and if I was looking at an index, I'd probably be looking at something like the Aussie. If I wanted to be a buyer at this particular point. Now, of course, I don't want to be a buyer at this particular point, but if this was to retrace, if we saw world markets retrace, then this may well be a fairly good one to go towards. The China Stocks 50 as well, and another pretty good day, you know, so far anyway. Sorry, we're looking at the weekly charts there. Pretty good day on the China Stocks 50, holding firm in its ground, but it looks like a bit of a head and shoulders pattern up here. If we look at the longer term time frames as well, hitting these all-time highs and keeping on going. Then we get into the more muddy kind of areas, like
Mate, just hang on 2 secs. John,
yeah.
The link is in the Telegram group, mate. So just go to the Telegram group. There you'll find the link. Sorry, mate.
Yeah, no problem at all. The IBEX. The IBEX is, you know, and this is where we have to really understand how these different indexes are formed, you know, and what they are most exposed to. The IBEX, being the Spanish indice, is very much focused on travel and leisure. So if travel and leisure as an industry is going to continue to get hit by more news of mutations and further lockdowns, then you'd have to say that that where you'd be looking at an Aussie to continue to the upside, the IBEX would be something that we'd be looking probably to sell off. So I'd see the IBEX as a potential kind of a downward draft, and it hasn't really recovered in the same way that many of the other ones. It's not in there. Hi, John. It's posted in the Actions to Wealth official Telegram group. It's not in our trading buddies one, is it? We can't put it in there.
Is it the same? Hang on, I'll see. If it's the same link, I'll put it in there as well.
Yeah, thanks, mate.
I don't know if it is the same link. Is it the same every day?
I don't know. I don't think it is. I'm not 100% though.
Here, I'm just about to put it in there.
Okay. Try that one, John. It's in the official one, but if you can't get it, try it in the trading buddies as well. Okay, mate, no problem.
It's changed every week. Okay, that's the one from the other the other Telegram group, so it should be right.
So we're looking potentially at weaker IBEX. So let's just have a look at it and see what it looks like on the short term as well, and the medium term. Here's the gap here. Now this is at an area of potential resistance here. You know, with this gap now being filled, you know, two things tend to happen with gaps. They can gap and go, or they do tend to as well when they are retested and filled. Then things start to move in the original direction, if you like. So technically speaking, the IBEX is at a potential a point where it could weaken. And I'm not sure if there's a setup here, but let's have a quick look. We've got our first low after the break of this resistance of this support line. So there's a low there. Now that would suggest coming up to the weekly pivot would be a selling opportunity with the IBEX. And that just about coincides with this horizontal level as well. We'll pull up a fib too. So this could be the trade I'll be looking at this week. 38% retracement, it looks like to me. Yeah, right on the money. Look at that. So 82.70 is the area that looks of huge interest when it comes down to the E35. So let's note that down, guys, that we're looking at the E35. I'll put a little note in the Telegram group later on, just to talk about that. I'm just going to quickly write down a reminder for myself. What's the date today? It's the 18th. Goodness
18th,
me,
yep.
We're cruising through January. Cruising through January. Right, hold on. What's that? Okay, here we go. January 18th. Right, so IBEX. I'm going to put a note in the Telegram group about the IBEX, which is the E35. And the price point is going to be 82.70. And if I get time, I'll certainly post the numbers in. And if I get time, I will just put some pictures in for you guys, just so you can see, you know, why I'll be looking at this. So just a quick recap. Just a quick recap. The reason that I'm looking for downside. Now, the first thing that I'm always after when I'm trying to trade anything. Chan, can we let Chan in?
Got to have two names, Chan.
Oh, Chan, yeah, get two names, buddy. You need your first and sir, or your sir and your whatever it is. It's only because we got trolled the other day. We need people to have two names now. Okay, anyway, so if we consider that some reasons that I'd like to take a trade. Now, I want a story. I want a reason to, before I kind of get into anything technical. I want a bit of a reason for it. So if I go back to the ASX 200, the reason that I'd be looking at the longs in the ASX 200 would be down to commodities, you know, and as I say, some research would have to be done on this, because I want to know that what the makeup is of the Aussie 200, because if the makeup is weighted in commodities, then which I suspect it is. I'm sure Jeff would be able to tell us a bit more about that. But if it's weighted heavily with commodities, then I'm quite happy to say, okay, well, commodity prices are likely to go higher this year. with inflation. So I'd like to buy the ASX 200, the Aussie 200. Sorry. Now then, I'd want to start picking out price points. It may be just a little bit high here, but it could be in this area that I'd still be okay with it. So if the Aussie 200 came down to 65.70 or 65.80, the lower end of this this pattern, then I'd be interested in trying to pick it up again. My issue with it is that you are trading into a resistance area not too far away. Looking at these monthly bars as well, that is suggesting that we could get some weakness. So it might be a short-term trade. It might be better on this one to wait for a little bit more of a pullback, and it could be this this horizontal level here. So 63.70 would be my first port of call to really want to try and trade the Aussie 200 to the upside. We can do some more work on that by checking out the seasonalities as well. What does it suggest about the Aussie when it comes to the Aussie 200 when it comes down to the seasonal movement, and that would dictate whether we are looking in this area or whether we're looking in this area for a trade. The Aussie 200 would be upside for me. The IBEX is downside for me. I'm not looking at China; it's broken out too high. The IBEX would be downside. The E35 would be downside because this is based on travel and leisure. That's where their economy is mainly based. So I suspect companies probably won't do so well if the pandemic continues to mutate and lockdowns continue to be enforced. Corridors are already being closed down. Some of those temporary corridors have been closed down today or over the weekend. So that's going to have more of an effect on these companies' profit lines. So the E35 looks like some downside, and I like where it is. So where the Aussie is maybe not quite where I want it, I like where this one is. It's just got to pop back up again and pop back up to where this weekly pivot is, which is also a Fibonacci level and this horizontal level here. So 82.70 looks good on that. Eurostoxx 50 is going to get sort of affected across the board. Now that means that the likes of the DAX and the Kakaron and those kind of stock, that they're all going to get rolled in together. And the pandemic is surging at the minute in Europe. It's not doing well at all. They're not handling it well at all. So another one that I'd be looking for downside on would be the Eurostoxx 50. The French the Kakaron, similar I suppose to the IBEX, but nowhere near as keen on it. It's nowhere near as weighted towards that travel story as the IBEX. So the IBEX would still win out on that. The DAX is interesting because they've got the new chancellor that is going to be coming in later in the year, as much as anything else. But again, lockdowns are meant to be lifted in 10 days' time, are unlikely to happen, and that's going to affect some of these German companies. But what we need to know about these companies is where their main exposure is. Biotech, the pharmaceutical company that's gone into partnership with Pfizer to get these vaccines out, has already, that's a German company, and they are late on getting it released. So you think that there's going to be a little bit of movement with the DAX as well. Maybe not quite as much as the IBEX, but if they're all going to be moving down, then you really looking at this point to pick your poison. But the IBEX would win out. The Hang Seng as well, as I say, not interested in trading China really. It's an obvious trade to the upside because of the way that they managed to control the pandemic, but it's not attractive here. It's kind of breaking out into levels that looks like it needs to come back and give us some retracement. Now that point would be okay, but it's a long way off. So there's not really much point in looking at the Hang Seng at the minute. If we look at it later down the line, then the first point of call is around about the 28,000 level would be where I wouldn't mind picking up the Hang Seng, but I think that's just too far away. Japan's quite interesting. I think their leader has got COVID, and it's another one that's going to get affected by some of these exports as well. So the pandemic could wreak havoc on the Nikkei. And business confidence. I think this week, that's going to be mentioned. So we need to keep our eye on what the state of play is with business investment in Japan. The Nasdaq is also, I think, quite an interesting one. It's had a massive move to the upside, as we all know. Now, the COT data suggests that the Nasdaq is probably the weaker of all the American companies right now. I don't know why that would be the case. I think that there's still, a decent story for tech, and I wouldn't be that interested in selling off the Nasdaq. I think it's one of the most dangerous plays of all. But I would be interested in selling off the S&P. When it comes down to what's going on with the states, I think that the S&P could suffer. Companies like Walt Disney, how's that going to get affected by a further strain of pandemic as well? So the story right now is I think is a little bit negative. Whether the Biden stimulus continues this to the upside is another thing, but I always have to keep at the back of my mind that stimulus and stimulus measures, particularly by a new president, are going to be, if you like, they're going to be almost covering and masking the real issues, and that's where the whole thing becomes a lot more difficult. The IBEX, for example, might continue to move to the upside because the pandemic is not the only story. When we know how some of this money's been banded around, and some of the printing and some of the loans and whatever else has been banded around, that keeps things buoyant. But there's going to be a point where the rubber hits the road, and we won't be able to continue to stimulate our way out of the hole, and it just depends on how deep that hole gets dug. So we need to be mindful of all this stuff, but really kind of rounding up, I think looking at particular indexes that could get further affected by the pandemic is something that we need to be mindful of. If we are looking for downside, we need to look for those ones, but we've got to continue to kind of like keep our ear to the ground with the story of what's going on in the States. Certainly, the lack of control they've got over the pandemic means that they're going to be in a hole probably for a little bit longer than most, and that could really affect things later down the line. And we know that if the S&P, the Dow, and the Nasdaq particularly start to move to the downside, everything on the planet will move to the downside. Maybe the Hang Seng is an exception, but most other regions are going to move to the downside. So then it's just about picking the poison. And as I say, I'm really interested in looking at the in the IBEX for that.
Is oil under pressure because of all of this new? Well, it's not new, but increased pressure through COVID.
Yeah, well, that's a really good point, mate. I mean, we see that that the WTI is at getting close to a level of potential resistance, and it probably will get resisted here. When it comes down to it, yeah, it's right on the money there, depending on where we have the trend line. But it looks to me like the XTI, if you like, is ready to move down. And is it enough? Just about the travel that they've started putting measures in place to kind of curb the supply of oil. So that might be enough to keep it, moving to the upside. So what I prefer to look at with this is if that travel story does start to unfold, I prefer to leave it, not trade it to the downside, but maybe use it as a potential price point to get in long with oil. So
yeah, I might see if Ainsley's available for Wednesday, and she can come on and give us her medium to long range forecast. Julian was extremely bullish on it yesterday.
Well, I'm not surprised. I have to say, I'm not surprised. I think that when it comes down to the talk of inflation, you have to start saying that commodity prices are going to go. They're going to be much higher, because this is if we think about what might end up happening here, and it's all about pent up demand. If all of a sudden we get a clearing of the clouds, and it might not be now until the end of the year, rather than going into the third and maybe even the fourth quarter rather than the second quarter. Pent-up demand means that goods aside, travel will probably spike. Now, if travel spikes, then that means that travel companies, airline companies specifically, they're going to need more jet fuel, to run their airlines.
How many players are we going to have left in the airline game?
Good point. Norwegian Airlines have already said that they are cutting back on long haul. to try and focus on short haul. But there hasn't been as many casualties at this stage as I thought there would be. So I'm not sure, and this is going to come down to governments and how governments react and are they able to keep these companies afloat? And it's all back down to the argument, isn't it? I think was it Smith that always said that you should just leave things be and just let the stronger companies rise to the top. If you just leave things alone and just let things happen naturally, then the stronger companies will come out of the ashes, and the ones that were carrying a lot of problems anyway will just die off. And I think that there's a certain argument for that, but that's not the
it won't be the only sector that happens in either. I can
no, it won't. And I suppose the danger is, for any government is for them to allow that to happen. It means that there's going to be a lot of job losses and there's a lot of pain, in the near term, and no government wants that to be the case. So they will put in all the measures that they possibly can to stop that happening. But it's a good question, mate. When it comes down to it, I mean, I've looked at travel stocks quite intensively. But and my first reason for that was because I thought that when the vaccine came along, then those stocks that were beaten up just gave us another opportunity. While we were a bit late to the party with some of the moves to the upside, the travel industry was still suppressed enough to get a decent price on it. So any vaccine rollout will help those particular stocks and companies to move. But the problem now comes is that they are the further this thing moves on and on and on, they're just starting to straddle a lot of debt. And the question is, how long is it going to take them to pay that debt off? And if we think about ourselves from an investor point of view, if companies are paying off debt rather than giving us any kind of yield, any sort of dividend yield, then we're not really looking at travel stocks now as a yielding to be part of a yielding portfolio. They're going to have to be growth stocks. It's almost like they're new companies all over again, because it's these new companies that carry a lot of debt when they start because they need it, because they need to grow. So they become a bit of a strange. They become in a really strange area because of that. But of course, this has happened before. Travel stocks, they're this is the kind of thing that does happen to travel stocks, because you get things like volcanoes erupting, in Iceland, which puts pressure on travel stocks while they can't travel through airspace. You get 9/11 happening. So
this is a bloody big earthquake, though. This is a big volcano.
It is, mate. And if you look back to 9/11, there was a spike pretty much within the next month of that happening. Where travel stocks all of a sudden got battered. They bounce back pretty fast. But you're absolutely right. This is something which is quite a deep and heavy hangover. So there will be some that you think would go. Does that mean that the other ones become better value because they're going to pick up a lot of the clients? I suspect it probably does in the long term, but in the short term, the debt is the biggest problem for me. I've got two problems with airline companies really. Firstly, the debt, and the second thing is the commodity prices. As jet fuel goes up in price, they're going to have to pass that on to their consumers. And I'm not sure that they're going to get away with it at the extreme point that they're going to have to go for very long. They might initially because of the pent up demand, but as time goes on, I'm not sure whether they can sustain that a huge hike in prices. And what that means to me is that the long haul will do a lot worse, because a hike in a price, let's say you run short haul journeys. Some of those short haul journeys can be as little as £100, and sometimes less, for a return ticket. You hike that up by 20%, you're talking about £120. Now that doesn't really bother people too much. Even if you're looking at maybe a slightly more expensive journey of £300, hike that up by 20%, then you're still only looking at £360. But if we're looking at long haul, then we're looking at we're starting at £800, going right the way up to name your price kind of thing when it comes down to getting into the upper classes. So, £800 starting to go up to near 1,000, that might start making people think a little bit harder about some of that long haul travel, particularly families. So I think the short haul
Not least,
companies.
and also they've got to get their confidence back about travel as well. It's not
Yes,
just pricing. It's not just oil. It's not just the pandemic itself. It's confidence about moving
yes,
around the world.
yes,
And
absolutely,
certainly,
absolutely.
I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. I can tell you.
No, mate, and this is the thing. This is where the vaccine doesn't really fix the problem, especially where you get stories that the pandemic, sorry, that COVID and the virus is mutating. Does it really add enough confidence when you think, okay, well, I'm protecting a bit against the original one, but I'm not really too sure about the other ones that are coming in. I think a test and trace system is much more of a. I think it could be much more successful to make sure that nobody gets in an area where you are where that has any kind of virus strain, and I think it would have been a lot cheaper as well. I don't know how fast this you would you could get it so you could have a test, but if they could get a test that was done within a minute, then you could test people kind of going into any kind of environment
They said
to
they
make
did
sure.
have that some months ago with the saliva test. I've heard no more about that. It's still the invasive poke
Yeah,
a stick up your nose as far as
that's
it
right.
goes.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, you've only got 5 minutes left. What are we going to trade this week?
Well, it's the same. I think the IBEX is interesting. I think today's a bit of a no-go because of Martin Luther King Day. I think maybe tomorrow and Wednesday could be a little bit tricky because of the inauguration. But I think when it hits Thursday, we really do have some interesting things to look at, because what we have on Thursday is a slew, really from
Yeah, it's
Wednesday.
almost a Super Thursday. Not quite, but yeah.
Yeah, things are really picking up. Look at that, Chinese GDP up 6.5%, so they're getting nicely back to their pre-pandemic levels, and still doing very, very well. Tuesday, very, very quiet when it comes down to news. I think this ZEW economic sentiment could be an interesting number. That's a yellow folder, but I have seen the market move significantly on that particular release before. Um, Monetary policy statement on Wednesday, and then obviously we have the inauguration. We have a press conference on Wednesday from Canada, and we have Bailey speaking and President-elect Biden speaking on Wednesday. But it's Thursday that things start to really pick up. This is the one I'm really interested in. Bank of Japan outlook report on Thursday. That really for me is the release of the week.
Bit of strength in the yen on. I don't know if it's on a preemptive move on that, but I see the yen's got a bit of strength about it.
Yeah, I'm not so keen on the yen, mate. I think that particular report, the outlook might start to dampen that, but we'll see. There's there certainly was whispers that business investment has been tempered, and fairly damp kind of going into the start of the year. And as I say, we've just got to let this story unfold, because the story continues to unfold. I can't see that business sentiment necessarily picking up. So I think that one could be a really interesting one. Monetary policy statement, obviously from Europe, ECB press conference. I'm not sure how interesting that's going to be. Christine Lagarde is incredibly buoyant and incredibly positive. She's a fairly positive character, so I'm not sure whether we're going to get 100% honesty from the ECB press conference or not. Nas, the Kiwi, interesting as well. So anybody that does trade the Kiwi, look at the prediction here. 0.2%.
I'm looking to at the moment.
Yeah, I think this is interesting, because you look at the jump down from 0.7% down to the 0.2% prediction, looks really negative. But actually, you look in context, and you have to understand that business moves at different points of the year more than it does at other points of the year. Now, if we go back, you can see 2007, the first release in 2007, January, was negative 2%. First release in January 2008 was 1.2%. First release in 2019, 0.5%. And we're going right down the board, 0.2%. So it goes to show, all these little spikes down here, apart from this one, all these little spikes down here all happened the first month of the year, the first release of the year. So I'm not too concerned if it comes down to 0.2%. I still think that's a pretty positive number. The average of the last 5 years is 1.2%. So if you look at what could happen to this particular number, to my mind, anything above 2, anything north of 2 is positive. Anything under 1 is going to be a little bit negative. So so the CPI number there could be a bit misleading if you're looking for the forecast to come down below this number and trade that as a bit of weakness. So I think that's quite an interesting one as well to watch out for.
Okay, happy days. You still in the FTSE?
FTSE, yeah. So we've got a different target with the FTSE, which I'll continue to post that in. I'll continue to let everybody know about.
Okay, happy days, mate. Thank you. Have a good week. I don't think you'll be too busy tonight because we do have a holiday in the UK, US rather. So I don't anticipate there'll be too much going on. We'll see you tomorrow, huh?
Fantastic. All right, have a good one, guys. See you then.
Rightio. Now I will go around my little neck of the woods, guys, and see what I can find. I do have a firm, fixed opinion on a few things, and that's always a dangerous thing. Should never go that hard. One of them is not euro dollar really, but I'm happy to talk about the euro dollar, and I see this as a hang on a tick. And we go back to the dollar index really, because the dollar index is what this is all about. And if we continue to see strength in the dollar, obviously we're going to see weakness in the euro dollar. Now I'm a fan of that, but I'm not a fan of jumping in here, obviously, because we've had a strong sell-off. We spoke about these 3 black crows. We spoke about the monthly pivot and how it would have to break before I got in, or we got up here and we could trade to it. We spoke about all of that, and that's what happened. The break has occurred. Now I've got to see a pullback before I get interested in trading this, and maybe even a substantial pullback. We're at a point, in my opinion, with the euro and a lot of these currency pairs against the dollar, and you can even flip it upside down if you want, where I can see a bit of excitement coming back in after a couple of retracements here, after it started to get a little bit tired. Maybe there's one more spike up here, I'm not sure, but I think this is destined for, down here at some stage. It's just a matter of, is now the time? And if so, okay, I'll sell any rally that I can see. Maybe that's going to be the case. Maybe it isn't. It depends, as I said, a whole lot on what that dollar index does. And if that dollar index, let's go back there and refresh your memory. If that dollar index does go to this line, which it seems likely to do, then euro will continue to sell off until we hit there. Then there will be another rally, in my opinion, as this goes back into retracement. And if the dollar remains really strong, and I'm not a fan, I've got to say I'm not a fan, but it could go to here. And that becomes the interesting part for me. I think by the end of this week, we should know the answer to that question. So maybe here, then pullback. I expected it to come down to here last week. It didn't, but it has, in my humble opinion, formed a little bit of a right shoulder there. So this is the neckline. If that's the case, maybe there's a retracement. Then we go to here, and then we look for the big pullback. So it's tough to get the timing right here. At the moment, I'm still looking for the pullback, which means there may well be another spike in euro dollar, which takes it maybe up to here somewhere, around about 124-ish. Maybe that's on the cards. And certainly if it was, that would make a good play to the short side, in my humble opinion. So it's a little bit tough for me now to be saying, okay, jump in short, and I wouldn't do that. But I'd need a nice little tweezer top sitting here, no question. A lower high here would get me interested, but I certainly wouldn't be trading any black bars at the moment. I don't think that's the way to go for me. If it's you and you're in short, happy days. I don't think you've got too much to to complain about, because it has had a nice little run to the downside. Just not sure how sustainable that is given that dollar situation and what we're going to see this week in America. Goodness me, anything can happen. On my watch list is or are 3 or 4 really currency pairs. I'll stick with the Aussie for now. I think the Aussie needs a breather, and maybe we're seeing the start of that now. And again, I just can't trade this bar, but what I can see is the monthly pivot sitting here, and maybe we end up below there, which would maybe give us a right shoulder with a bounce off that. Then it starts to get interesting. Where's the neckline here is the question. It's probably going to come through there. So maybe a break and retest does get really interesting for this one after we pull back off it. So bounce off the monthly pivot, come up to here, form a right shoulder, break the monthly pivot and that then neckline, and then we can look to trade this short. How far? Again, we're going back to the dollar. This is not, for me, an Aussie story at all, because I'm massively bullish the Aussie, but it needs a rest, in my humble opinion. This is the weekly chart. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 out of the last 10 weeks have been positive. Of course, we're due for a pullback. The monthly pivot may be enough. It really may be enough. But look at the possibilities here. You know, if you're talking bigger picture stuff, maybe that's the level, this left shoulder here, if it is to be a left shoulder. Look at that level there. It's strong. Okay, so why can't we pull back to there? Of course we can. And if the US dollar goes into that, remains in the situation that it is currently in, and that is bullish, then of course this can happen. So I'm a short to medium term bear Aussie US dollar, but the timing's everything. As I said, the dollar index could go long before it goes short, could go short before it goes long. It's not a very clear picture for me at the moment, and I certainly don't want to be anticipating at this point, given what's going to happen this week in the States. Anything's likely. I think the trade for me this week is Kiwi CAD. Now, I spoke of this last week, and we spoke about this head and shoulders, and we formed a beautiful neckline ultimately before on Thursday breaking clear or breaking below the monthly pivot, then pushing back there, gave us a retest of the neckline, right? Left neck, right neck, left shoulder, right shoulder, break, retest, all around the monthly pivot, and we got some dreadful candles. So, you know, trying to get into to trade that was extremely difficult on a short time frame. But, you know, simply, if you look at it in retrospect, and we're all great traders in retrospect, if you have your stop loss above here, above the retest of the neckline, you're laughing, right? I'm not, because I'm not in it. And Friday, of course, was the day that it took off. I was up a mountain on Friday in the rain. I've got to say, it wasn't much fun, but that's where I was. How do we trade this now? Well, left shoulder, head, down here, right shoulder. That's kind of all I can see. And again, this is dependent on something else, and that something else in this case may well be oil. So oil, CAD oil. We've got BOC on Wednesday. This is the one I want to watch. But again, if you can see that break and retest there, my goodness, how clear is it at the end of the day? Very, very clear. So that would have been Friday trade, guys. Some good things happen on Fridays. I'll get in front of the charts at some stage on Fridays, but won't be anytime soon. So again, bearish here for the moment, got to be, but find a way in. That's a difficult prospect. A pull back to the pivots makes it a little bit easier. Then if we do get that, we don't really want to put in higher highs, but if we were to put in a lower high based on this one over here, came back underneath the pivots and retested, then I've got a trade. There may be others that pop up. Maybe there is a confluence up here at some stage. I don't know just now, but there's also this to look at, that little intraday trade line here, which will probably hook up over here somewhere. Maybe there. That's already had a retest. That's on its way again. Maybe we're too late into it. Maybe we've just missed it altogether and it just goes straight down here. I'm hoping that's not the case, because it does look good to me, and it's one I want to pick up this week at some stage. So keeping my eye on this area fairly closely. Pound yen is another, and I would love to get into this, but actually it's a bit bearish on the yen, I've got to say that. I've got to see this pull back to here somewhere. It's tough to see, to be honest, given what we're looking at right now. And BOJ again, the BOJ's on Thursday. That will probably make a massive difference here. The pound's likely to do anything, as we know. Are we looking at the bigger picture here and seeing a big double top that's formed? Am I looking for a place for this to bounce and give me a lower high? Yes, that's what I'm looking for. So if we can come down to the monthly pivot, force our way back to here, to this level, and put in that lower high, I think this is a good trade short. Really do. If you look at this on a bigger scale once again, you can see that trend line on the weekly chart. The other way to pick this up would, of course, be to wait maybe till, I don't know, Easter or something, and it breaks out, comes back underneath and retests. I don't think I'm going to wait for that, to be honest. We are already at a very strong resistance level. You can see it's been resistance, support. I don't think I want to wait for that trend line, to be honest. But it's always on the cards. But lower high here, I've got to trade this, and I'd love to see it bounce off the monthly pivot and get into it. So that's definitely on the watch list. Interestingly, dollar CAD, I think we spoke about this last week as well, and it was going to be our trade of the week last week if it's set up. And the setup was going to be as a false break of, I think it was that trade line. Will I be right? I think so, guys. I think it was that one. We were looking for a false break of that after it got underneath the pivots, which it did beautifully, and set up absolutely as you would like it underneath that trade line. But it went right down to this low before it came back above, and then gave us the retest. So clear false break in the end. Tradable? Not really. No, because you'd already had a very strong rally back to here. And then you got the pullback bar, which was large, to say the least. So you'd have been entering there, your stop loss here, 64 pips into 40. That's not so bad. But yeah, I don't know that I would have been too keen to get into that at that point. I'm dead set keen now, though, now that we've put in this double bottom, to come back to here, maybe to the weekly pivot. And I don't know, this trade line's now gone. You can't use that anymore because it's been violated too many times. But I've got to find a way in here if we can pull back to these pivots. Probably not the daily today, but all things are possible. But certainly the weekly in the next couple of days, if we were to pull back to here, maybe get a couple of lows, lows, and therefore a trade line that we can look for false break. Maybe that's a way in, but at the moment it's a bit hopeless, if not hapless. If I look at the bigger picture on that, you can see the double bottom that's formed. Again, we're talking about the dollar and we're talking about the CAD, two currencies which are going to have a big change this week. Well, not so much change, but there's big news around both of them. And then you throw oil into the equation as well. This could be anything, really could. And if it does take off and reverses, wow, how far can we go here? Because this has been just falling. Yeah, I probably haven't got that much confidence in it, to be honest. It's a lovely little tweezer bottom sitting there. Definitely back to 129.70 odd. So yeah, I'd trade it for sure. I've just got to get that that higher low. And if you remember the dollar index chart that we looked at last week, and we were saying if we can get a pullback to this level, I'll just remind you and refresh your memory, a pullback to here, right? Left shoulder, head, right shoulder. This is exactly the same. Left shoulder, head, no right shoulder yet. So looking for that to pull back, but just like the dollar index, it didn't come back far enough, but it did come back. So keep your eye open on this one. I think if it comes back at all, and that's the weekly chart, right? If it comes back on the daily chart, the 4-hourly chart, and looks for this line here, you can see the left shoulder there, right? If it were to bounce off the monthly pivot and pull back to here, but not reach it and put in a higher low, that's your entry point there. Anywhere here if it pulls back. And that's what I'll be looking for on dollar CAD. One more. It's not this week's, it's last week's. And we spoke about this last week as well. And we spoke about that bar there and how I wouldn't trade it because it's a black bar. And we were looking for a pullback, got the pullback. Did we find an entry, anybody? There. Today would have been okay, but you're trading straight into an untested weekly pivot, which makes it difficult. No trade there for me. Although there was a possibility on Friday by the look of it with a break and retest. So that would have been tradable. You would have picked it up now if you'd been happy enough to stay in over the weekend, but too hard, really, really too hard. Give me a pullback now. Where maybe to the weekly pivot. We've got the double top. We just need to pull back to here and we can get a little bit confident on that. So this really isn't on this week's watch list. It was on last week's, but I'm kind of convincing myself now that it's still possible. I don't like that. Yeah, no, I'm going to take it off the watch list, but no doubt I'll watch it, if you know what I mean. All right, guys, that is it. Swissy yen, I've told you the story about Swissy yen. I have taken my second profit at just above the monthly pivot there at 116.40. Move stop loss to entry, and that one can just go as low as it likes now. And I still think there's huge prospects. We could pick this up again if and when it bounces off that level. So down to here, bounce, give us the lower, or anywhere really, to give us another lower high. And I think that's still eminently tradable. So keep your eye on it. Okay, that's about us for the day. I'm not going to be doing too much tonight, I've got to say, because it is a US bank holiday and there's not a whole lot around that I'm absolutely right now got to trade. But I hope I've given you a little bit of an insight as to what I'm looking for. And we need pullbacks to get into the market, I do believe, for me anyway. You can, if you can find ways in, but yeah, for me, I still trade setups and not levels. I'm looking to fix that because it just adds another bit of flavor to your trading. Guys, have a great week. Thank you for joining us, and sorry about the difficulties getting into the room. That's going to be the MO basically is find the link. The link changes every week. Code changes every week. This week should still be the same. You should be able to get in tomorrow on the same link and go from there. Righto, Angel, you can knock off. Thank you very much indeed. We'll see you guys tomorrow and have a good one.